Under the cover of shadow, the rogue roams around Sanctuary, ready to surgically eliminate any threat unfortunate enough to be caught in its sights. My name is Kodiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and today we're coming to you with our brutally honest impressions of Diablo 4's Rogue. Master of Agility and Subterfuge, the Rogue is able to capitalize on both ranged and melee combat kits. It's a class you'll likely gravitate towards if you enjoy moving at breakneck speed, spreading deadly effects, and dispatching hordes of enemies with relative ease. Though not for the faint of heart, we definitely have some thoughts we wanted to share to give you some perspective on this potentially difficult to master but fun to play class. As is standard with each class, you'll build up and manage a class resource. In the case of the Rogue, it's called energy. By tactfully weaving between your basic builder and core spender skills, you'll find ways to strategically work in other skills to dominate the battlefield. Agility skills are what makes you feel like a real rogue. These allow you to both maneuver across the battlefield quickly, but also give you control over the flow of combat. Subterfuge skills provide both offensive and defensive buffs while allowing you to debilitate enemies in the process, allowing you to set up that next strike. Imbuement skills enhance your weapons and skills with potent elemental effects, namely Shadow, Poison, and Cold, each providing unique strengths to solo and group play. Ultimate skills? Well, need I say more? These flashy finishers not only look incredible, but are amongst the most potent in the entire Rogue's kit. While the Rogue does lean more into the agile glass cannon archetype, Life Leech and other defensive effects allow it to dance in melee range without much fear of going down. After reaching level 25, Livid farmed out an entire set of potent legendary gear and experimented with numerous builds, so I think it's time we dive into what makes the Rogue special. Much like myself thinking I wouldn't enjoy the Sorcerer, Livid had the same sentiment about the Rogue. He was worried it would be super squishy, wouldn't play as fast as he had hoped, and couldn't tell if some of the skills would fall flat. Well, after only a few hours, I'm happy to report he got over all of that and fell in love with the class, and by the end of the beta, it was his absolute favorite. The Rogue feels extremely snappy. It sounds obvious, but it's much faster than both the Sorcerer and Barbarian, and quite often, you have to pump the brakes so as to not lose the rest of the party. It's also one of those classes that could clear content right off the rip with good positioning and skill synergy. For example, you aren't really dependent on a crazy legendary aspect to make quick work of hordes of enemies, but you did have to at least be mindful of which skills synergize well together. Overall, we have to point out that the melee side of the Rogue's kit did feel a lot more cohesive and capable of tackling veteran content. The range side is decent, but doesn't quite compare. Now keep in mind we were capped at level 25 and a majority of the game wasn't even available to us yet. Ranged combat certainly seems like a focus that requires a lot more skill point investments to truly make sync. Overall though, the baseline balance of the class feels just right, and that makes us even more excited for the full launch. By level 25, the vision of what the Rogue could be was much clearer. It's an incredibly strong and nimble class, and in terms of strengths, we'd have to say the Rogue is fully capable of dishing out massive amounts of damage to both single target and large packs of enemies. What's interesting is that the AoE damage almost comes along with the single target damage, as a lot of skills have pass-through effects or require you to reposition yourself so something like your blades can pass through enemies after your last kill. The class also has great energy sustain right from the start, more so in the melee build than the ranged variant. The best part? The sustain just came from dealing damage and watching everything explode in a trail of blood. It didn't feel like we ever needed to sacrifice a skill slot to keep the ability train rolling. You also have a surprising amount of single target lockdown and crowd control available at various points in your potential kit, all with really solid uptime. In almost every instance of group play, you'd see Livid immediately jumping on the main elite of the group and keeping it out of play, then using that positioning to blow up the rest of the group around him. It both looked and played incredibly fun. The last really great thing about the Rogue is just the mobility in general. Whether you're actively grinding content or just moving about the open world, being able to rapidly dash from place to place and be so far out in front of your teammates made the class a blast to play. Now, it's not all rainbows and sunshine with the Rogue. It does have several shortcomings depending on the playstyle you choose to go with. While you are incredibly mobile, that mobility relies heavily on your energy reserves. If you make a mistake and overspend, it's very likely you'll be in trouble if you run across a pack of enemies. Your survivability takes another hit if an enemy manages to land a stun. Nearly every time an enemy incapacitated Livid, his health bar would drop almost immediately below a quarter. If those energy reserves are still close to empty after that, you're most likely dead. Finally, let's talk about the ranged playstyle. This functionally turns you into a turret, and while you could sacrifice a skill slot to add some mobility back into the mix, it often doesn't synergize with your other skills. It feels really strange to not have a ranged attack that lets you disengage, such as a leap backwards or evade upon attack. You do have access to caltrops, but that skill might not fit everyone's preferred playstyle, but it almost feels essential in a ranged build considering how squishy the rogue can be when not mobile. Like we said earlier, the feeling of ranged combat might be much better later on where enemies rarely manage to even get near you, but up to level 25, most ranged playstyles lack energy generation and a way to get out of harm's way. Now, at the time of making this video, we still only know the details of 2 of the 3 specializations that you can choose from a rogue. All of them, however, seemingly point to you just being in combat as much as possible. The first specialization, Combo Points, unlocks at level 15, and it works by building up a combo as you use your basic skills. You'll notice this as 3 little yellow marks above your hotbar. Your core skills then take advantage of these combo points, and depending on how many combo points you've built up, that core skill will be unleashed as a far more potent version. The next specialization, Inner Sight, unlocks at level 20. At random, a specific enemy, be it a single target like a boss, or an enemy inside a crowd, will get a purple eye placed above them. Hitting this particular enemy with an attack will build up your Inner Sight gauge next to your energy resource. Once full, you'll be granted unlimited energy for 4 seconds. If the marked enemy doesn't die within 10 seconds of being marked, it will jump to a new enemy. Any energy-dependent build will be able to play insanely well off of this specialization, as something like Twisting Blades, for instance, uses a ton of energy to cast, but is cast incredibly quickly. This allows you to absolutely spam this attack into an elite, dash away, and watch everything evaporate, while walking away still at full energy. The last specialization is Preparation, which unlocks at level 30. This is the one that wasn't available during the beta window and still doesn't have many details about it. Supposedly, there is an in-game achievement called Rogue Preparation that tasks rogues with using their ultimate 3 times in 60 seconds, so this could end up being a cooldown-focused specialization. Throughout our time with the open beta, we tried to ensure we actively tested classes in both solo and group content, and just like most other classes, group play can allow you to take skills or effects you otherwise wouldn't consider, since a teammate can likely cover the weakness it puts in your build. Now, if you go full damage and add clear, this type of playstyle seems to pay off regardless if you're playing solo or in a group. Dashing in and out of groups, hitting them with imbuement effects like Shadow, and watching them all explode as soon as one enemy dies is one of the most satisfying things about the rogue. The cool thing is, if you have multiple rogues applying the same imbuement effect to enemies like Shadow for instance, everyone else running that imbuement can benefit from that, leading to dungeon clearing at speeds that might make you sick. The best thing about this, the rogue feels this way pretty much as soon as you hit level 5, and it only gets better with each level and skill you acquire. Once you do hit level 25 and beyond, the rogue's gloves really come off, and pretty much any playstyle turns you into a rapid killing machine. In group content, some legendary aspects can start doing things like apply smoke bombs to your dash, which allow you to dash in and daze everyone, giving your team a huge leg up as you continue to dash around between enemies. Shadow can also consistently apply vulnerable to entire rooms of enemies almost constantly, and as a group, having a nice 20% damage amp on enemies at all times feels really good, especially as a side effect of just killing things. Livid wanted to specifically highlight a few skills in particular that made this class such a joy to play, and you might want to give them a go yourself, and some of them are quite interesting even by rogue standards. Twisting Blades quickly impales a target, causing them to take increased damage while impaled. After a short delay, they'll fly out of the target and return to you, passing through and damaging any enemies in the process. This can even add cooldown reduction for each enemy hit. Penetrating Shot will simply fire an arrow that pierces enemies in a line, but with some upgrades can slow and knock down elites while dishing out some crazy good damage. Shadow Step makes you unstoppable and teleports you behind the target, backstabbing them. With an upgrade, this can stun, and being on a short cooldown allows you to chain stun elites around an encounter. Last up is one of your ultimates, Shadow Clone. This quite literally makes a shadow of you that mimics all of your actions and deals a portion of your base damage. This means multiples of the same skills will get used, item effects have 2 times the chance of proccing, and imbuement spreads to enemies even faster. It's a seriously insane ult that feels good in both ranged and melee playstyles. There are a ton of other skills to check out, and with only a handful of skill points to play with during the open beta, I'm sure most of these skills will feel even better with extra points invested or multiple passives unlocked and feeding into that power curve. It's still hard to know what skills will rise to the top come the endgame. Before we wrap things up, we wanted to quickly touch on the build potential of the rogue. Now, we all know at some point a meta will form, but one of the selling points of Diablo is that it's just a more casually approachable game. Because of that, and based on Livid's time with the class so far, it's abundantly clear that both the melee and ranged playstyles will be viable. Within those playstyles, you'll get to make the decision between 3 different imbuements, which all play very differently. Shadow has you looking to do burst damage, Poison has you looking to apply stacking damage over time, and Frost leans into both crowd control and crit damage. That already gives you a massive playstyle variation, and that doesn't even factor in all of the other ranged and melee skills, which all feel viable in the right combination. And that will only get crazier with passives and the Paragon board unlocked come full release. Hopefully now you have a better understanding of our experience with the Rogue in Diablo 4. It plays a lot more aggressive and at times is more forgiving than what the typical image of a Rogue playstyle might be in your head. It'll always be a DPS monster, but the team has done a decent job of sprinkling in some other skills that make the leveling and solo experience an absolute blast at breakneck speeds. Ultimately, it's important to ask, is the Rogue fun to play? And the simple answer is yes. Friends, we hope you're enjoying our Diablo 4 coverage. While content was limited during the open beta, we look forward to checking out and creating even more videos when the game goes live on June 6th. As always, if Diablo is on your radar and you want more content like this, including deeper guides and eventually some fun builds, hit that like button and consider subscribing. We also plan on opening up a Diablo 4 clan once the game goes live on June 6th, so if that's something you're interested in, consider joining Legacy Gaming on Discord. Our open beta clan filled up in one day, so be sure to stay tuned for more information come launch. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.